All right, here we go. Okay, welcome everyone to Lambda School's camp lesson number 3. So went over a bunch of JavaScript fundamentals yesterday, and we're going to review that a little bit. I'm going to go over some solutions to these problems. It's a lot of material, so I'll walk through it a little fast, and then what we'll do is we'll anyway, you can go back and review that. If you want to see them in a little more in depth, you can go back and rewatch it. Again, if anyone's popping in here, you can go back and view recordings. So if you go to our website, you can join the Slack team where we have people helping you out answering questions. We also have recordings or the archives of the previous lecture videos. So if you want to jump in and see the previous stuff, that's all on there too. The previous videos are all on our YouTube channel as well. They're public, so you can view them. But yeah, so grateful to have you guys all here, and it's been a lot of fun. We've had fun working with people in Slack, helping people through questions. We have a couple different TAs in there that have been helping. So Thomas Dillard is one of our current students. Satish just joined. He's one of our TAs in our main class. But yeah, so anyway, we'll have some people around to help answer questions as much as we can. But yeah, so anyway, let us know if you have any questions about the homework or things like that. So again, an analogy that I want to use is I want to emphasize that this is very much like learning a sport. So you're, day one, we taught you how to dribble the basketball. Yesterday, we taught you how to do a layup. Today we're going to start teaching you the fundamentals of shooting the basketball. So it's practice it, and it takes a lot of practice to really get these concepts down. And so, the idea of functions, that may be a fairly tricky concept. That's probably pretty tricky for a lot of you, for most of you. And so it's something that just with more practice and more exposure, it will begin to sink in. And so the way to master this stuff is to push forward and to continue to practice and to put in as much time on this as possible. So, but yeah, we'll walk through some solutions in these and guide you through that. If you're interested in attending any of our full-time classes, we start a new one at the beginning of each month. If you are doing the mini bootcamp right now, which if you're watching this video, you are, but if you're working through this stuff right now, then you will be on pace to be able to start in our February class. But we also accept applications for our future courses, of course. So anyway, let us know if you're interested in applying for our full-time class. Let us know, and because you're in the mini bootcamp, we'll expedite you through the interview process. We've already had several people reach out and enroll. And anyway, so if you're interested in doing that, then let us know. Again, the class is 6 months full-time. It's live, online, structured. We have instructors from Apple and Google and NASA JPL, and just a very, very highly qualified group of instructors with a lot of teaching and programming experience. The school is free upfront until you find a job. So you don't pay us anything until you are employed full-time as a software engineer making more than $50,000 a year. So kind of some cool news. Our first class that graduated last week, we just had a guy get hired today as a mobile developer for Uber. So that was pretty cool. So that's probably the biggest name company for one of our graduates to join so far. But things are going well for them, and they know their stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So we'd love to have you guys come join. All right, that being said, let's dive in and go over some solutions to this. Again, with the solutions, I'm going to go a little fast so we can spend most of our time focusing on the new material for the day. But I'll walk through some of this. So, okay, so the first one, we have a new string is equal to hello world. Okay, I solved this one yesterday and then did an example add, commit, and push. So, okay, so now, and then same with this one, num 15. Okay, so create a Boolean variable. So new bool, I'm going to change null to it's true. It could be true or false. Either one will make it pass. All right, now here I need to replace the null with the number. So 10 minus something equals 5. We'll put in a 5 there. So 10 minus 5. And then this part will be evaluated first. So 10 minus 5, this will be evaluated first by the computer. So this will bring up the number 5. And then it's going to say 5 equals 5. This compares equality here. And so 5 will be equal to 5. And so this entire expression will evaluate to the Boolean value true, actually. This is something I'm going to dive into this, and we're going to dig into this a little bit more in depth later. People are saying to zoom in. There we go. Okay. Let new multiply. So 10 times null equals 40. So all right, 21 modulo 5 equals what? So again, the modulus, this operator, it's essentially you perform a division and you find the remainder, and that's what it evaluates to. So the remainder of 21 divided by 5 is 1. Here to the space after that equal. There we go. Okay. All right, so now let's come down here and look at this one. All right, so these are some other ones I had filled out yesterday. So return string, so return the string, add x and y. So we get the sum and return it. Okay, subtract. So on this one up above, you could have just done return x plus y. So down here, I'm just gonna go return x plus y. So what this will do, the way the computer reads this, is when the subtract function is run, 2 numbers will be passed in. We'll come down and it's going to say return the result of subtracting these two parameters, these two variables. And so it's going to take whatever number was passed in for x and then whatever number was passed in for y, find the difference, and then return it. Okay, multiply, again, the same thing, but we're going to use a different operator. So multiply. Okay, divide is going to be the same thing. Okay, R equal. Okay, so this one, let's see. So with this one, what we're going to do, let's see. I'm getting some more requests to make this even bigger. So let me zoom in even more. Okay. So what we'll do here for R equal, we need to determine if they are the same thing or not. So again, the way we do that is with the triple equals operator here. And I'm going to pull up Google Chrome, the Chrome console, so we can play around with that for a moment. So I'm going to jump over. I'm going to drag this over real quick. All right, so, okay, so if we come over here, what we can do, so if I do 5, triple equals 5, I can run this, and we see that it evaluates to true. So 5 equals 5 is true. 7 equals 3, that evaluates to false. So these expressions evaluate to either true or false, one of the Boolean values. And so we need to return true if the two variables are the same, false if they're different, or if they have different values. True if they have the same value, false if they have different values. And so all we have to do here is return x equals y. This will evaluate it. And so let's say, for example, when it's called, if x is 5 and y is 10, then this is going to substitute the 5 in here, the 10 in here, and it's going to say, all right, 5 is the same as 10. Okay, that is a false statement. So this evaluates to a false. Okay, so some people are asking about double equals versus triple equals. So in JavaScript, you can also have a double equals operator. Never use double equals, always just use triple equals. So there's some differences, and it has to do with the types and some conversion that it does with the values. Just use triple equals. It's generally considered bad practice to use double equals because the rules can be inconsistent. and difficult to memorize, and it can create some different issues. So the vast majority of companies out there will require their developers to not use double equals when writing JavaScript. Okay. Right, are same length, so return true if the two strings have the same length, otherwise return false. Okay, so people got tripped up on this thinking that we were doing the same kind of thing here, seeing if the strings were the same, but we're checking the length. So this function, if the two strings we get are ABC and DEF, this function should return true because those have the same length, the same number of characters. This would also be true because it's the same length, but yeah. So what we need to do here is return str1.length is equal to str2.length. So again, what happens here, the way this function gets read is it comes down, it sees the return statement. Before it returns, it has to figure out what this expression is. And so it's going to take str1.length and it's going to compute a number from this. And then it's going to compare that number to the number that's the length of string 2. And so if ABC and ABC were the strings that were passed in, or ABCA and ABCD, it'll say the length of string 1 is 4, and then it will say the length of string 2 is 4. And so it compares them. Okay, 4 is equal to 4. That evaluates to true, and then now it can return. It's in its most simplified state, so it returns true. Okay. So this is something tricky for people when they're first learning how to code. It's tricky to start to think about the way to think how the computer thinks. So some people are asking, they did if str1 dot length equals str2 dot length. Return true, else false, and it's not liking this because that's unreachable code. But so there we go. So yeah, this is totally fine. Does the same thing as what I just had. So yeah, so it does the same thing. And so this is kind of our first introduction into the idea that in JavaScript and programming, there are multiple ways to solve all of these problems. You could write your code very, very differently and get the same result. Some ways are better than others, and it takes time to learn that and figure out the principles that guide the decision behind which solutions are better than others. But yeah, there's multiple ways to solve all of these, to solve all these functions. So yeah, this is totally valid for right now. Eventually, I would recommend using something like this, but for right now, just get it to work. Your first job is just to get it to work any way possible, and then we can worry about optimizing it and making it better. So always the first step is just try to get it to work. Get it to work, and then once you have it working, then if you want to, you can go back and optimize it and fix it. So, but for right now, just do everything you can to make it work. So don't worry about like, oh, is my code ugly, or is it pretty, or is it sufficient? Like, we're not like, don't worry about any of that stuff right now. That's stuff for another day. So, and generally, it's better. It's considered good practice too when you're building a program to just beeline it for a working solution. Like within reason, but then and then optimize. It's the issue is called premature optimization, where you spend too much time trying to optimize the problem beforehand. But so anyway, that was a nice little nice question, a nice little segue here. So okay, all right, this one less than 90. So again, two different ways I could write this. I could say const num is less than 90 is equal to num less than 90. So again, this expression here is going to evaluate the true or false. And then I can return it. So this is totally fine. Or I could just return num is less than 90 directly. So I can comment out this code, and then the computer will ignore it. It won't run it. Oops. Okay. So I could just do return num is less than 90. And so again, this will be evaluated. So if the number is 50, it's going to say 50 less than 90. So again, this operator is checks to see if the numbers are less than. So 50 less than 90, then this will evaluate to true and return true. If the number is 100, it's going to say 100 is less than 90. That's false. That is not a true statement. And so this evaluates to the Boolean value false. And then I'm going to return false. Okay, greater than 50. So return num is greater than 50. Okay. Get remainder. So return x modulo y. Is even. Okay, so there's a cool trick here that we can use is that if you divide a number by 2 and it doesn't have a remainder, then it's an even number. If you divide a number by 2 and it has a remainder of 1, then it is an odd number. That's how you tell if a number is even, or that's how you can prove if a number is even or not. And so what we can do here is return num modulo 2 equals 0. So if the number 20 comes in, what we'll do is we'll say 20 divided by 2, and then this evaluates to the remainder. So 2 divides into 20 evenly 10 times, and then we have a remainder of 0. So 0 equals 0, and that's true. Okay. If we have the number 15 come in, we're going to see 15. So 15 divided by 2, we'll get 7 with a remainder of 1. So this whole thing evaluates to 1. So 1 equals 0. That's false. And so then the whole thing evaluates to false from that point. And so you have these expressions that get simplified, and it gets broken down into different pieces as we go along, evaluated from left to right. So return num modulo 2 equals 0. So again, for the is odd, and again, sorry about the typo here. That's been fixed in the original version, but that won't be up to date on your local versions. But if we do return num modulo 2 equals 1, it's doing the same thing, but we're just flipping it here. So checking to see if the number's odd. Okay, square it. So return num times num. We could use math.pow here. I'm just going to do num times num because timing a number by itself squares it. All right, so you have cube. So we can do return num times num times num. So again, this will work as well. So I was going to take the number, multiply together 3 times. Okay. All right, for raised to power, we could actually write this. Using a for loop, you could do it, but we're going to talk about that later today. But we're going to use math.pow here. We're going to go math.pow and number and exponent. And so, if it comes in with a 5 and a 2, then it's going to square 5, return the number 25. If it passes in a larger exponent, it will work as well. So, and again, you could also use math.pow up here and go math.pow of num and 3, math.pow of num and 2. You could do that. But anyway, just showing how we can write it different ways. And it's fine to do it either way. Okay, round number. All right, we're going to have to use the math object again. Turn math.round num. Okay, round up. So this is where we use math.ceiling. So again, with all of these problems, you can go through and check them on. You can go through and check them on the README with the assignment. So in the README, it explains all these different methods, and so reference that heavily. And there's there's good notes from the lecture and stuff like that you can check. Yeah, I'll go through and run these tests in just a moment, but we'll do that just in the terminal. So I'll switch over to the terminal and then run the tests again. Okay, let me talk about this string stuff. So you can concatenate strings with a plus sign. Concatenation means you're just adding some strings together. So const name is equal to Ben plus Nelson. All right, I'll put that space in a different spot. So Ben plus space plus Nelson, that's my name. So now I can type in the name in here and we see Ben Nelson prints out. So you can add these strings, add strings together. I could do let dog's name is equal to Aiko. That's my dog's name. I could say dog's name plus exclamation mark. Let's see, it produces the string Aiko with an exclamation mark. That didn't modify the original string, but that just anyway, but it does the concatenation. It adds the two strings together. So if we come in here, add exclamation point, all we're going to do is we're going to say return str plus exclamation mark. Find names, similar to what I just did above in Chrome. Return first name plus the space plus last name. Yeah, so there is a string.concat, depending on the company, some will not want you to do the plus sign, just because sometimes that can be confusing to tell what's going on. So string.concat specific, very explicit that you are combining the strings. But for right now, don't worry about that right now. Just use the plus sign. That's acceptable right now. Okay, so get greeting. So we're giving a name, and then we need to fit it in like a template. So we're going to return hello plus name plus exclamation mark. Just going to fit it in there, and then that will produce the correct string. Get rectangle area. So let's return length times width. The area of the rectangle. Get triangle area. So I have base and height. So we're going to take 1/2 1/2 base times height, or base times height divided by 2. And so what we can do here is return. And to figure this out, you just Google it. If you just Google get triangle area or find triangle area, the first result, like Google will actually fill in and show you the formula for it, and then you just translate that to code. So we're going to return, and what we can do here, let's see, base times height divided by 2. And you can use parentheses if you want to group different operations, so the order of operations applies, but just like that, because it'll go left to right with the multiplication. Okay. All right, so now let's go in and run these tests, and maybe I have some typos or some things in here, so we'll go through and clean it up if any of them are failing. So I'm going to switch to the terminal. All right. On here, I'm going to say npm. So again, like if you see, I'm in the root of the folder. So here's all the different assignment folders. Here's the package.json file. Here's the node modules folder that was generated by running npm install. So again, just as a review too, so people were asking about this, npm install, this command tells the node program that we downloaded to go look at the package.json in the folder that we're in, find all the different dependencies on it, and then go and install them inside of a folder called node modules. So actually, we can go and look at our package.json. Don't modify it. In any of these assignments, don't go in there and modify it. But if we look at it, it has some stuff for testing. But if we come down in here and look at, so there's some dependencies. So right here we have dev dependencies. We see there's ESLint and jest. These are 2 different dependencies that we're using. So it's like the recipes. It has some other details. So, Daniel, he's one of our instructors that put a lot of this stuff together. Anyway, just some different metadata about it. But yeah, don't touch this file. You're usually never really manually editing it. It's usually indirectly. But anyway, don't worry about that right now. Okay, so let's go run our tests. So npm run test JS1. So hit enter, run through, and they all passed. Okay, so I did that all right. Okay, so this is what you'll see at the end when they're all passing. You'll see a bunch of check marks, 28 passed. Okay, so there's some solutions to the first assignment. All right, now we're going to dive in and, or in future assignments, we probably won't have time to go through every single question, but we'll go through and talk about a couple of them just because by reviewing them, it brings out some important concepts that are good to talk about again and to go a little deeper into a few. But all right, we're going to dive into some other stuff now. So I'm going to go to, let's pull up a JS bin. Okay, actually, I'm going to use Replit. I like Replit a little bit better. Okay, all right, here we go. So similar to JS bin, it just, I'll look at it a little bit more. Okay, all right, let's make this big and zoom in more. All right. So today we are going to talk about, okay, so some additional comparison operators that I want to talk about. So I'm going to say, all right, so I can do something like this. So with console.log, you can just write the values in there directly in between the parentheses too. So I can just write in hello world like that and it prints out, it's true. I can also put an expression in here. So I could say 5 plus 5, and that's going to be evaluated before it gets logged. And is logged. So it doesn't log out 5 plus 5, it's going to run it and then log out 10. If I put quotes around it and made it into a string, then it would print out 5 plus 5. So the number 5, a space, a plus, a space, and another 5. But here, this is telling the computer this is JavaScript code that needs to be evaluated and executed before the result is passed to the logging function. Okay. All right. So something we can do here. So I just want to talk about comparison operators. So again, 1 is greater than 2. That's false. So you see it prints out false. Then 11 is greater than 2. That's true. Okay, so we see that this whole thing evaluated to true. All right. I can do, let's see, and again, likewise, 2 is less than 3. That's true. Okay, we can do greater than or equal to. So we can do 10 is greater than or equal to 10. That'll be true. 11, false. Okay, so it's greater than or equal to. And again, we can reverse that to be less than or equal to. So 10 is less than or equal to 11. That's true. 11 is still true. 12 is false because 12 is not less than or equal to 11. So there's your less than or equal to sign. Okay. All right. So again, don't let it confuse you with, const x is equal to 5, or like it gets 5. This is for assignment. But then x triple equals 5. This is comparing a quality here. So if I wrap this in a pass that to a console.log, we're going to see true printing out. So x is equal to 5, and that's true. If I put a 15 here, it's going to be false. So again, this does assignment. This is saying the variable x was going to be the number 5. Here we're saying, is x, the variable we created, is it equal to 15? And so it's going to substitute the 5 in here for the x, and then compare the equality. Okay. All right, so we can also reverse it. We can also check to see does not equal. So I can say, all right, is x not equal to 15? And the way we do that is we take off this first equal sign and we put in an exclamation mark. And so this says does not equal. So is x not equal to 15? Yes, that's true. They're not equal. Here we'll say 5. All right, is 5 not equal to 5? Well, 5 is equal to 5, so this right here would be false. So again, we can reverse it. You know, we could do the same thing with strings. So cat triple equals cat. We run that, we get true. Just uppercase cat. No, it's false. So these are two different characters. A lowercase c and an uppercase c are two different characters. Okay. JavaScript does not have a specific data type for a specific data type for single characters, but just strings for the whole string. Okay. All right. So just wanted to talk about that. Again, all this stuff is in the README for the assignment tonight, so you can see all that. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about some if statements real quick here and get a little bit more just a little bit more advanced control flow stuff. So here I'm going to say if true log, let's see, first block, and then let's do else log the second block. Okay, so again, if this is true, the first block gets executed, and not the second one. The second one gets ignored; it gets skipped. If I do false in here, the first one is skipped, and then the second one is run. Okay, so but there's also a thing we can do here called else if, and so what we can do here is it can check for another condition. So we can say if this condition, then run this block. Otherwise, else if this condition, then run this block. Otherwise, run this third block. And you can chain as many else ifs as you want in there. So you can do a bunch of, you can have a bunch of different else ifs. You could have as many as you wanted all chained together. So I can put another one right here. But I'm just going to do these two for right now. So so if these are both are false, and they get read in order. So the first one gets checked, okay, false. The second one gets checked, okay, false. And so then it will run the third one. So the third block prints out. So if I do if 5 is greater than 2, and then I run that, it's going to print because the first one is 5 is greater than 2. If I did if 10 is greater than 2 and this one, so they're both true, still only going to run the first one. It's going to run the first one and it won't run any of the others. So it runs the first one where the condition is true. So if I do, let's see, let me make a string up here. So str is equal to hi. We'll say if str.length is equal to 2, or no, I'll say 3. And then here we could say if str.length is equal to 2. Oops, not a. But we see that the second one is printed because it comes down and we see hi.length will be 2 because there's 2 characters. Is 2 equal to 3? It is not. And so this first block is ignored. We come down to the second one. All right, is hi.length, is that equal to 2? So hi's length is 2. And so is 2 equal to 2? Yes, true. So this second block is run. If this had a bunch of characters, so it's a really long length, then the third one's going to run because these are not exactly equal. Okay. So so again, whatever is inside of this if statement's parentheses is going to be evaluated to either true or false. And every value has a truthiness or falsiness to it. A 0 is interpreted as a false. A 0 is interpreted as a false. A 1 is interpreted as a true. So if I switch this to 1, the middle block, the second block will run. Anyway, the different values have truthiness or falsiness to them. Null null is falsiness. Null is falsy. All right. So if we did, let's do this. Age is 18, and then we'll say that we're gonna have a function. Well, actually, do this. Let's create a function. So function can drive. Okay. So age. Let's see. Actually, let's do. Right. Yeah. So can drive. Okay. So what we'll do here is we'll can drive. We pass in the number 15. We talked about this a little yesterday, but so again, if age is greater than or equal to 16, then return true. Else return false. We could do something like, maybe we want a string to return. So we'll say can drive, can not drive. And then let's say that we want to check to see if they can use a learner's permit if they're 15. So what we'll do here is we'll add in an else if. Okay, so I have an else if. So else if age equals 15, return I can use learner's permit. And that little slash I did tells the string to say that this quote mark is it's not ending the string. We literally want this character to be in the string. So now can drive 15 for the result in a variable, and then let's print that out. Okay, so let's run this. We see can use learner's permit. If we pass in the age of 16, can drive. If we pass in the age of 14, cannot drive. Okay. So, all right. So it allows us to chain and build out some more sophisticated logic based off of the value of the variable. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on now. There's some really good examples in the documentation that covers if statements, else if, and all of that. All right, something we're going to talk about now. We have some fun logical operators. Okay, so logical operators allow us to check for multiple things inside of an if statement. Okay, so right now we're just checking this one statement true. So we could say 5 is equal to 5. All right, so and then hi will print. Okay, but we can also check for two expressions, so or more. I could say if 5 is equal to 5, and then I do these two ampersands, and 3 is equal to 3. Obviously, this is kind of silly, but if 5 is equal to 5 and 3 is equal to 3, then we print it out, and both of these expressions evaluate to true. And so what the ampersands mean is that if the expressions on both sides of the two ampersands evaluate to true, then the entire expression here evaluates to true. So it allows you to kind of group things together. So if we have, so const num is equal to 5, and then we'll say if num is greater than 0, and num modulo 2 equals 1. So if it's odd, so if it's greater than 0 and the number is odd, then it prints out, and that's both true for 5. if I change this to 6, nothing prints out. I think that part got skipped. One of these two strings, so false. All right, so we can chain them together. So the and means both sides. So it has to be 2. A single ampersand does something different in JavaScript, and that's something for another day. Okay, so something we can do as well is we can do or. So we can do these 2 vertical pipes. And so this is the logical or operator. So this means if one of these is true, only one of them has to be true now. So if this is true, or this is true, then the first block is executed. Otherwise, the second one is executed. So, so right here, so if num is greater than 0 or the number is odd. So right now we have this. So it's true ran because 6 is greater than 0. And so only 1/2 of it needs to be true. So this is true, this is false, but the entire thing evaluates to true. So again, with the or, it's true or false. This whole thing is equal to true. This can get a little bit mind melting, but true or false is equal to true. True and false is false. So because with the ampersands, you have to have true on both sides. So both sides of it have to be true. If it's false and false, the entire thing doesn't work. If it's true and true, the whole thing works. So they're particular in that regard. So with the or sign, again, only one side has to evaluate to true. Okay, so this is the or. Okay, so 3 operators that we're talking about today have the double ampersands, or, and then the third one is the not operator. So it's an exclamation mark. So what this does is this inverts. It inverts the value of the expression. So so right here, if I did exclamation mark false and run this, we see true prints out. It ran this. So what the exclamation mark did is it took the false and it flipped it to a true. So I could say num is less than 0, but then I could put a exclamation mark around that. So this gets kind of tricky, and this is actually, yeah, so it even flagged it and said confusing use of exclamation mark. Generally, this isn't the way you're doing this. This gets really confusing and messy, this logic in here, and it becomes tricky to follow. So usually what's happening is it'll be something like if is admin, for like a user. So if is admin. So what this is saying is logically this is saying, so if this is false, it's how you explicitly check to see if something is false. So we're saying, all right, if is admin is false, then console.log, you do not have access. So it's usually something like that. Usually you're checking to see if a property is false, or if a property is null, or if a property is undefined. Because false, null, and undefined will all be flipped to true. 0 will also be flipped to true. Okay. So don't worry too much about the nitty-gritty details there. It's more just generally this idea that the exclamation mark flips a false to a true, and it flips a true to a false. So if isAdmin is true, you have access is printed, because the true comes in here, and a true normally makes the if statement work, but then we flip it to a false. False, and so this first part gets ignored, and we print it out. Okay. So the three logical operators. And again, I realize we're moving at a fast pace. So hang in there. Ask questions as you have them. We'll do our best to help you out. And, we have some TAs and people in there helping and answering questions. So jump in and, give it your best shot. Let's go in and all right, we're going to talk about two more things today. We're going to talk about arrays and for loops. Okay. All right, so we've seen some different types of variables. So we have strings, const is admin true, numbers, and some other types you've seen like a null get thrown around and some things like that. Numbers, strings, and Boolean values. Those have been the main ones we've worked for. We're going to talk about something today it's called a data structure, and it's essentially it's a variable where you can have lots of different values all tied to a single variable name. So it's like if we wanted to have a bunch of different numbers. So let's say we had test scores, and we wanted to have the test scores for 5 different people. So you're like, well, maybe we could store them in like a string, so maybe so here's the 5 test scores. So maybe you could do something like that. This gets messy and tricky to work with. And so what we can do is we can store them in what's called an array. Array, again, it's a variable where you can we can stick a bunch of stuff in there, and there's a whole world of study and in depth that we can go into with arrays, but just at a very, very high level, it's like we just have a bunch of values, generally of the same type, that we're wanting to store under a single variable name. So like test scores or const friend names. Okay, so we have an array. So let me show you how to put stuff in an array. So with these test scores, we'll just write the numbers inside of the array like this. So comma separated. So you separate them with commas. So now test scores is going to be definition of name. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But we see these test scores right here. We have it's just a bunch of different numbers, and they're all collected and stored under a single variable name. So test scores references all these different values. So now with friend names, Connor, Mike, Austin, Stephanie. So just like a bunch of names. And so these strings, they all fit together underneath just this single variable name. So friend names references all these different strings. Generally, we try to keep them to the same type. In some languages, you absolutely have to keep them of the same type, but in JavaScript, loosey-goosey, and so we can put whatever we want inside of here. It can all be mixed, and it's not a big deal. So in JavaScript, it works. Generally, we're keeping the same type just as best practice. Generally we're doing that. So, okay, so an interesting thing here, and this is something that we'll explain more in depth later. So we are using const for the variable name for an array. But we'll get in and we'll talk about some ways that we can modify these arrays now. So, so I come down here and log it out. And I'll print out the array. And we see 50, 25, 100, 75, 78. So it all prints out. So let's say that I wanted to, access a specific item in the array. So let's say I only wanted to print out the middle item, the 100. So the way that I can do that is on the variable that I'm using for the array, I can put brackets right after it, these square brackets, and then I can specify an index. So in the array, there's order. And so, this is the first item, the second item, the third item, the fourth item, and the fifth item. The order is important. So an interesting thing about arrays is that it starts with, we start with a 0 index. So the 0th item, or the first item in the array, is at index 0. So not at index 1, it's at index 0. So if I print out test scores at index 0, we're going to see the number 50 print out. So I'm going to come down here and so friend names, and then mixed bag. And then what we're going to do here is this one prints out Connor. This one prints out null. So then we can change it. So, we count over from left to right. So the 50 is at 0, 25 is at 1, 100 is at 2, 75 is at 3, 78 is at 4. So if I print out the fourth item, or the fifth item, but the item at index 4, we get the number 78 prints out. Again, 2, 0, 1, 2, this is going to print 100. So 2 here will print Austin, 0, 1, 2, etc. So, so these are the indexes. So we can access the item at that specific index to pull it out. Okay, so it starts at 0. So it starts at 0 and counts from left to right. Okay. We can get the length of an array just like we can do it with a string. So if I take these brackets off, let me actually get rid of those. So test scores, well, I'll do friend names. Friend names.length, I print that out, and we get 4 because there are 4 items inside of the array. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, the items are all comma separated. Put a comma at the very end. Okay, so this prints out all that information. Okay, so we can also modify the arrays after we've created them. So we have our test scores array. Let's say we want to add another test score into it on the end. So what we can do here is we can say test scores at dot push, and this adds an item onto the end. So we'll add a 99, and then let's console.log test scores. All right, so we run that, and we see that 99 was added onto the end of the array. We can also do what's called a pop. And so with the pop, that removes items from the array. So what we're going to do here, we're going to add a 99. We're going to do a pop that removes the item off the end. We'll do another pop that's going to remove the 78, and we're going to be left with an array with those 4 items in it. 50, 25, 175. The pop also returns the value that's being removed. So right here, I'm going to add in 99. So this array, so here, I'm going to add in 99. And then here, I'm going to pop off 99. So 99 gets removed. Now the array looks like this. And now I'm doing another pop to remove 78. And here, I'm going to do another pop and pop off the 75. But then this is actually going to evaluate to the number 75. And so I'm going to return the number 75 because that was the last item we removed from the array. And the actual array is going to be 50, 25, 100. So if I run this, we see 75 and then 50, 25, 100. So we can add an item onto the end. We can pop it off, pop another one off, log it out, log that one out. These ones we're just ignoring, and then they get deleted and removed by the computer because we're not doing anything with them. And then this one here, we print out the array. Okay. All right. Some of you have been asking about why does const work here, because we are modifying and changing the array. So I'm going to speak very high level to this answer right now. Don't just absorb as much as you can from this explanation right now. Don't stress about it if this doesn't make sense to you. Just you can use const with arrays, and you should use const with arrays. The technical reason, and this is something we get into much more in depth later on, is that the reference variable, the object in memory that it is referencing is not changing. And what const means that we are not going to change this reference and have it point to anything else in memory. That's what const means. The underlying data can be modified. That's legal, but we cannot change what the reference points to. And so when you modify a string, you're actually not modifying the string. You are creating a new string in memory and pointing the variable to the new string. And that's why you can't do const with strings that you're going to be changing. Okay. All right. If you followed along with that, great. If that didn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. Just know you can use const with arrays. That is a concept that we'll dive into more in depth. So use const with arrays. People asking about that. All right. Okay, so there's push and pop. We can also add items onto the front of the array. So let's, so I can say friend names dot unshift, and then let's put in Karen. Now if I console.log friend names, we see Karen is on the front of the array. And so you can do an unshift. You can also do shift, which is like a pop from the front. Okay, so now if we run this, I added 3 shifts. Oops, typo. So we see Austin and Stephanie are the only names left now. So shift removes items off the front. So it's just like a pop on the front. Yeah. Okay, so unshift and then shift. Okay, so there's a bunch of other little methods that we can use with arrays, but these are the main ones. So again, like length, push and pop, unshift and shift. These are the main ones that we're talking about right now. There's a bunch of others, that eventually you'll learn, but for right now, these are the main ones. So we can also modify items inside of the array. It's like in the middle. So let's say I want to change, I'm going to put an exclamation mark on Austin's name. The way I do that is I'm going to say friend names, and I need to access the item at the right index. So 0, 1, 2. Austin is at the second index, so 2. And then what I can do is I can do a, I'm reassigning it. So I'm saying friend names at index 2 is equal to friend names at index 2 plus an exclamation mark. And we log out friend names, and we see that Austin now has an exclamation mark on his name. Simplified, whenever you have something that's like something is equal to that same thing plus something else. Another example would be like let x equal to 5, and then x is equal to x plus 1. You can actually simplify all of this to x plus equals 1. Okay, and so here we can actually do friend names at the string of that area. We're going to do plus equals exclamation mark, and that's identical to saying the string is equal to the string plus the exclamation mark. So anyway, that works as well. Okay, all right. So now we're going to talk about all right, so now we're going to talk about, and I could even just do friend names at index 0, 1, 2, 3, and I could assign that to Jocelyn. And we see it printed out, and then that replaced the item at that index. So we assign something new to it. The number 15. The number 15 is our friend now. Okay. All right. So okay. So these are arrays, basics of arrays, accessing them, dynamically accessing them, getting items at the different as using the index to add and modify items in the array. Arrays are super, super common in JavaScript. It's one of the most common things we're using. You're going to learn about objects in a future lesson, and arrays filled up with objects. That's one of the most common things that you're working with in JavaScript. So arrays are a similar concept to arrays are in pretty much every programming language. And there are some differences, with how arrays are implemented in JavaScript and how they're done in other languages. But the high-level concept of an array is the same here. Okay, so it's pretty universal programming concept. Okay. All right, so now, last thing we're going to talk about. So, and again, yesterday when we talked about control flow, we had things like, like we're going along doing our stuff, and we get to an if statement, and an if statement is like a little fork in the road where we can go off one way or we can go the other direction. So like an if else, it's kind of like it could branch out a couple different ways. Anyway, so it's like we can go and there's a bunch of different directions we can end up going. With a for loop, that's when we're getting to a piece of code that we're wanting to repeat multiple times. So maybe we have a little block of code here that we want to run. We want it to run 100 times. And so we're going to run it 100 times. And once it is run 100 times, then we will continue on. Then here's another little fork in the road. So this idea of control flow in the program, how it's going along and it can take different paths with our code. It's like an if else and stuff. We can do that and move it around. So a for loop allows you to repeat for a certain number of times. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the syntax for that. So for loops are it allows us to select a piece of code and run it a specified number of times. All right. So for a for loop, okay. So we'll do 10 plus plus, and I'll walk you through this in a lot of depth in just a moment. Print that out. Okay, it prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what this loop did, this loop is going to run the block of code in here the number of times that I specified, and I told it to run 10 times. So let me show you how I did that. So with a for loop, so kind of like in your if statement, you have your you have the parentheses where you specify there's a condition that you check for, and then you have your block of code where you can do stuff. Inside of the for loop, it's the same idea. We have the for keyword, we have our parentheses, and then we have our curly braces. So, it's a for loop like this. So, this is its most basic state. Then inside of the parentheses, we have 3 sections. Okay. Separated by semicolons. So this right here is a super, super basic for loop. And now we need to fill in all these different parts. So this first part is, this is our counter. So let I be equal to 1. So let I get 1 variable called I, and we are having it initialized to the value 1. And this is a variable we're going to use to keep track of what what cycle of the loop we're on, like how many times we've looped. So I is how we track that. Okay, and then here in the middle, this is a condition that needs to evaluate the true for the loop to keep running. As soon as this evaluates to false, the loop stops running. So at some point in time, this needs to be false. If it never became false, so if I just wrote true here and ran the code, this would actually crash my browser, and I would have to quit Chrome because this for loop would keep running forever and ever and ever, and it would never stop. And so I have to have this condition here. And then what I do is this third part, this is an operation that's going to be performed, loop runs to modify my counter. So what's happening here is I starts at 1, and then the loop's going to run. And then this plus plus thing here, what this is doing is this is going to increment I to 2. So adding 1 to a number and minusing, like subtracting 1 from a number, are super, super common operations in programming. And so we have a built-in little operator here called a plus plus, or there's also a minus minus to increase the number by 1 or decrease it by 1. So what this is saying is we have I, this I variable that starts at 1. So I is equal to 1. And then, and so this is how the computer reads it. So we have I set to 1. Now it's going to check, all right, is 1 less than or equal to 10? Yes, so this is true. So now it's going to run the for loop. So it's so it's going to come down and it's going to run this. And actually, let me just check this real quick. Yep. Okay. All right. So what this is then going to do is it's going to run the loop. Console.log high will be printed out, and then I will be incremented to the number 2. Change this to I. Well, we can actually see it as it all printed out. Oh, yeah, this thing right here. That issue. Okay. So then we come back up, and I is now 2. So we run through again. Is 2 less than or equal to 10? It is. We print out 2. We turn 2 to 3. Now I come up and check again. All right, is 3 less than or equal to 10? It is. So execute the block. When the block finishes, I gets turned into the number 4. All right, is 4 less than or equal to 10? And we run through, and we keep repeating this cycle, this process, up until I is equal to 11. As soon as I is equal to 11, this is false, and the loop ends. And then we continue down here and running it. So, yeah. So quick little side note. So someone talking about prefix postfix iteration. They're just doing a little test here to check to see when it actually runs the when it actually does it. The postfix operator has a couple weird little side rules around it. But anyway, don't worry about that. Okay, so basics of a loop here. Again, we have our counter variable, and then we have our condition here that needs to be, as long as this is true, it will continue to run. And then we have to move towards the point where this will be false. At some point in time, we need this to break. Otherwise, it's an infinite loop. Okay. Little side note, the road around the new Apple HQ is called infinite loop. So yeah, an infinite loop is when you have some type of a loop that you didn't, it's never hitting a condition where it breaks, and so it keeps running and eating up your computer's processing power, and it will never stop until you kill the program. Okay. All right. So basics of a for loop. So if I wanted to print out the numbers 1 through 5, 1 is less than, I could say less than 6 or less than or equal to 5, plus that out. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so this is something that you're just going to want to play with a bunch, like write tons of for loops, get in here and adjust these different things and play around with it and try to print out different outputs. And that's how you're really going to get the basics of the for loop down. One of the main things that we do in a for loop, or that we use for loops for, is working on arrays. we have const names is equal to Ben, Austin, Karen, Ryan, and so we have a bunch of names. And let's say we want to print them all out, not as an array, but we want to print them out individually. Or let's say we want to add an exclamation mark onto each one of these strings. Okay, so the way that we're going to do that, this is something we'll review more. That you're not going to have to do this as much in the homework tonight, but this is something that we will, you will have to do some of this tonight, but we'll review this tomorrow as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have I start at 0, and we're going to have I be the variable we'll use for the index. So I'm just going to write this out. This is something that this is one of the things that you'll kind of want to just memorize and repeat until you get this down. But for let I get 0, I less than names dot length I plus plus. What this is going to do is I will start at 0, and as long as I is less than the count of items in the array, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, names dot length will be 5. Get 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. Then I is going to actually match up with all of the with the indexes of all the items in the array. So now I can do something here where I say console.log names, and then at the index here, instead of putting a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or whatever, I'm going to actually put the variable I here. Again, if you remember, the first time this loop runs, I will be 0. The second time it will be 1. Third time 2. Fourth time 3. And so I can stand in for the index. And so we run this and we see Ben, Austin, Karen, Ryan, Dan. They all printed out one by one. Okay, so now let's modify them. So let's say names I plus equals an exclamation mark. And then now let's console.log names. And we get Ben, Austin, Karen, Ryan, Dan, and they all had an exclamation mark added to them. So this is a very, very common type of an operation to loop over an array left to right. This is super, super common. Eventually, you'll learn there's some different little shortcut methods and things you can use for this type of thing. So like right here specifically, like there's a thing called a map and a for each and a reduce and stuff like that you can use. But yeah, this is a very basic thing that you'll be using for loops for. One of the main use cases for loops and looping is when you're working with arrays. Okay. All right. So this is the last thing I wanted to cover today. I'm going to get in and adjust this now. So let's say that we wanted to go backwards over the array. Someone was asking about that. This shows how we can, modify these different to make it happen. So I'm going to change this now. We're just going to print out the items in the array. Okay, so here we have Ben, Austin, Karen, Ryan, Dan, all printing out. Okay, so now let's go backwards. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set I equal to names.length minus 1. And again, the length of the array is 5. But if you look at this array, if you were to look at index 5, there's nothing there. So index 5 would be right here. And so because we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 5 items in the array, but at the 5th index, nothing's there. So we have to go minus 1. So I is going to start at the index of the last item. And then we're going to say I is greater than or equal to 0. So as soon as I is -1, we're going to stop. And then instead of going I plus plus, we're going to go I minus minus. And so we're going to start from here, and we're going to go right to left. And if we print that out, we see Dan, Ryan, Karen, Austin, Ben. So it prints it out. So the loop, the I variable changed in it, and we were able to print out the items from right to left. So, so you can go back and forth on that. So again, the point is just to look at, to break it down into these 3 parts, and then, be able to modify those 3 parts to get your for loop to operate in the way that you want. Okay. All right, fun stuff. So we covered a lot of information today. There's a lot of stuff we're covering in these 2 weeks. So just be a sponge, hang in there, do your best. We are going to offer this same, the same class we're doing now, this, live free mini bootcamp. We're going to offer it again next month, offering it on a monthly basis. And so if this is something that's really, hard for you right now and it's tricky, just do your best and you can come back and you can redo this class, next month, and you can come try it again and get a little bit better at it. Even if you have no intent of ever doing one of our full-time classes, that's totally fine. This is meant to be it's a service. We're volunteering to do this, and yeah, we market our class in here. But there's no obligation on your part to do anything with us, and so we're just here to teach because we enjoy teaching, and it's a lot of fun. So again, if you are interested in doing one of our full-time classes, we'd love to have you apply. There are still a few spots available for February. We've had some people from this class apply and get accepted. So anyway, if you're interested in doing that, then we would love to have you come and apply. We'll expedite you through the interview process. It's a lot of fun. This time last year, we were teaching these free classes. It was in my basement, and now we've been able to grow, and we have over 20 employees and over 200 students, and it's growing pretty fast, and it's fun, and it's working. Our students are doing really well. Deadline for February applications. If you're doing the mini bootcamp, then you'll be then just apply ASAP. If someone isn't part of the mini boot camp and they were to apply right now, then we would look to bump them until March, unless they had a solid programming background. If you're working through the mini boot camp right now, you can still apply for the February class. We'd just like you to apply ASAP so we can work with you and make sure that you're getting the help you need so you can make it through the pre-course work. Because we want to make sure that you would be ready by day one. So if you do want to apply for February, just do that ASAP. And if you're wanting to do that, message me or Austin. Probably Austin. Message Austin. He handles more of that stuff. And so message him. Let him know that you want to do the class. You'll get. He'll speak with the admissions, the head of admissions, and we'll get you bumped through the list. So we have some spots set aside now for some of these later applications. But if you're interested in a future month, you can still reach out, and then we can get you interviewed in there. So just DM Austin if you want to apply for February, and we'll get you expedited. Because usually it's so we do get a lot of applications every day, and it can take some time to get it through. But because we have a few spots in February, if you are interested in doing February, we can expedite you through it. So anyway, if you have any other questions about our course, feel free to message me or message Austin. Let us know. But either way, have fun with the homework tonight. So with your homework tonight, it's similar to last night. There's another file. So lesson 3 JS2. You're going to run your tests. You're going to say npm run test JS2. So you're just going to modify that line a little bit to run it. But otherwise, you just go into that folder and do the same thing you did yesterday with intro to JS. So you're just going to go into that folder, and and then down in, they're going to have another, there's a homework.js file, and then you'll be able to run the tests. So we're going to do, we have 2 more days of JavaScript we're going to focus on, and we cover quite a bit of information. So just, it's more of, wanting you to, get practice with the fundamentals. And again, teaching you about arrays and for loops today, that was us teaching you how to shoot a basketball. So now you got to go practice it a bunch. You're not going to have it mastered tonight. You're not going to have it mastered by the end of the week. It's going to take a long time for that to, really get, to achieve a mastery level with it. But then, yeah, next week we'll be diving in and talking about uh, HTML and CSS, and focus a little more on CSS positionings and things like that. And then the DOM, we'll talk about what that means, and so you can get in there and do some fun stuff in the browser and actually start manipulating web pages. And at the end of this, you'll be able to build simple web pages, and you'll understand like the building blocks for how to put web pages together. And then there's lots of cool tools and libraries and things like that that you can continue to study afterwards to build more sophisticated and fleshed out applications that are more real. So yeah, so again, today was JS2, and so 3 and 4, and then yeah, HTML, CSS, and DOM stuff. Okay. All right. So again, if you're coming into this and you have like totally zero experience at all, this stuff can be pretty hard, at first. So just ask questions, do your best, and just keep practicing, keep trying, and it really comes down to the time that you invest in it. So just be aggressive with asking questions, working through the Feynman, writing prompts. Those are like, you don't have to give that, you don't have to submit those, but working through those prompts will help you better understand the questions and help you discover the stuff you don't know. Okay. Oh yeah, so I see someone asking about international students. Right now, this is only available to U.S. citizens. We are looking at opening it up to the free upfront option is only available to U.S. citizens because of just the legal contract work around it that we have to design. And so we are actively working at supporting other countries, but it does take time, and we have to work with lawyers and have to experiment and do all that stuff. So so we will be, first on the list will probably be, Canada and, some other English speaking countries. And then, we'll potentially be looking at some different other languages and other international options. So, yeah. Yeah, so as far as Europe goes, this is something that we will be we are looking into it at the moment, because we are less than a year old, we're relatively new, and so we are so we still have some work to do for international expansion, but that is on the roadmap, and that is something that we want to support. So for you international people, someday we want to do that, but yeah. Anyway, but in the meantime, you're welcome to come in here and learn as much as you want, and we'll help you. And yeah. Okay, Brittany's asking, is it 17% of salary total over 2 years, or 17% year one and 17% year two? So it's 17% in both years. So if you so if you got a job, just so the math is easy. If you had a job making 100,000 a year, you'd pay 17,000 in the first year. The second year, you would pay 17,000, but we cap it at 30,000. So you never pay more than 30. That's the ceiling. Which yeah, so it stops at the 30,000, just because if you win the lottery, it's that that wouldn't be very cool of us to legally bind you to 17% of your, or something like that, or you inherit a bunch of money or something, and like obviously that's not what we're wanting to take a part of. It's we only the purpose and the intent of this is we want you to pay your tuition once once you've been able to successfully apply the stuff that we've taught. And so we're flipping that. And so instead of you initially investing in us by paying us tuition to then teach you, with the hope of you getting a job, the idea is that we are investing in you as a student. We are training you for free up front initially. And then as you become successful and develop a successful career, then we get our tuition money back. So it flips it. And the advantage to that is it makes it accessible. And then the other thing is that it aligns our incentives with your incentives. And so our incentives as a school and as an institution is to make you very successful. So um, yeah, people are right. Yeah, the 70% of computer related income, yeah, it would only be related to stuff that's yeah, lottery wouldn't count. Right, that was a bad analogy. Yeah, so it has to be related to um, it has to be a technical job that's a result of the training that we provide. Okay. Yeah. So again, so the whole idea is to try to create a more affordable student loan instead of what we're a university's incentive often is to get you to take out a student loan so then this university immediately gets its money and then you are on the hook to pay back that loan to the lender that provided it. And so the university gets its money up front, and then if you studied a degree that doesn't have a strong practical application, then you're on the hook to pay back tens of thousands of dollars, if not over $100,000 in some cases if you're going to an out-of-state school, and depending on where you went to school, and depending on what you're majoring in. So if you're studying a low ROI major, and then you take out a student loan for it, you're putting yourself into a risky position, and so it's so that's the idea here, is that our incentives are aligned. So our incentives are not to saddle you with debt so we can then take your money and then you're in debt to someone else. The idea is that, once you are successful with our school, once you are, successful in your career, then you'll come back and pay the tuition. And so it's just trying to make this, a high quality, world class education accessible to anyone, and that's the vision for this company. And as we want to provide high quality education to everyone who's willing to work hard. Yeah, and and in a lot of universities will even say that maybe their purpose isn't to really get people ready for jobs even, and there's a lot of discussions there, and I'm uh, and I think there's great things that come out of university. So I'm not gonna sit here and just rag on universities. I'm just saying that there are some inefficiencies with the way their incentives are set up, and it's leading to some problems, some pretty big problems in the United States right now. Someone asked me if you're a green card holder, that should be fine. I should double check with that, but if you're a green card holder, um, yeah. So the reason that we said $50,000 or above is that way, if you get like an internship or something short term, then you're not going to pay back. And if you're getting a programming job above 50,000, for most of our students, that's the vast majority of our students. That's a pretty big, pretty big pay bump. So our first student to get a job, through Lambda School, through this class, he'd never made more than $15 an hour in his life. He got a job as a senior level developer, making 80,000 a year. I think it was, yeah, 80,000. I think is what it was. But he, so that's a huge jump in income, and so he'll pay back 17% for the 2 years. But then he gets to keep that 80,000 salary, which will increase with raises and shifting positions and all of that throughout the rest of his career. So that's worked out really well for him. And the other thing too is we don't want to take your money if the school doesn't help you get a good job. We don't want to, we don't want that on us. And so if you're not successful with the things that we teach, which you know all of our students so far have been very successful with it. Um, but yeah. Free Lambda School T-shirts. If you come to the full time class, then you'll get a T-shirt. Yeah. Yeah. So asking about bonuses. So it's gross annual income. So the bonuses would be counted in that. Um, yeah. I mean, the average salary. I mean, there's it's usually you're not gonna I mean, it depends on where you live too. Um, I don't think you could even find a job, a programming job that pays less than 50K in the Bay Area, unless it's like at a startup and you're getting a ton of equity. Um, but I'm originally from Utah, and a lot of starting programmers will be somewhere between 60 and 70. So first class has graduated a couple days ago. 25% of job offers so far. One of them is a senior engineer. Some of them are junior engineers. One's more of a mid-level. One guy's a mobile developer for Uber. Uh, Others are full stack and front end engineers. Yeah, so part-time class will be launching in July. Part-time class is a year long because there's just a lot of stuff we have to teach. So it takes a long time. And again, this right here isn't just this is an optional Q&A. So feel free to duck out and just start working on the homework if you want. We're just answering questions about our course. Nightly full-time would be great. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Yeah, glad to have you guys here, and it's been a lot of fun. We love teaching. That's why we do this. So we're here to help, and regardless of whether or not you're going to do our courses, of course it's just open to all, and happy to have you here, and talk about code and teaching, and it's fun stuff. So don't feel bad to ask questions if you don't have any intent of ever doing one of our full-time courses, because this is just a free community service we're doing, and we do talk about our class. Okay, when will we see some of the practical uses of JavaScript on a web page? Lesson 8. So when we get into the DOM stuff, that's when we link it all together. How likely is it that one could find remote work from homework after completing the program? I live in a remote area and currently work remotely and to keep this arrangement. If you had many grads find remote work, we have a few right now, 2 that I know of that are currently interviewing for remote roles, or actually 3. And so these aren't from the 25% that got jobs. The 25% that have jobs, those are all on site. It's difficult. Remote jobs are more competitive because engineers want them more. And for your first job, typically we recommend you don't work remotely, just because it's nice to have that face time at a company, and you can go a long way. And yeah, like something that Austin said is, yeah, beggars can't be choosers. For your first job, it's pretty much just like you can be somewhat selective, but pretty much you just want to get your foot in the door the first place you can. And then and then for your second job, that's a lot easier. So that's actually what I did in my career. When I first got out of school, I worked on site, and then and then for my second job, I was more selective. And at that point, once you're moving on to your second job and you have work experience, then you can be pretty selective about where you want to work. And then remote jobs are a lot easier to get. Okay, see a bunch of people still typing, so I'll hang on here for a little bit longer. After the mini boot camp, where do you recommend we go to keep learning and practicing? I would say if you're interested in front end development, I would say go do Facebook tutorials on React and start learning React. That's how you can build more complex web pages. If you're wanting to do backend stuff, I would say find some tutorials on Node and Express, and start learning about databases. There's a lot of tutorials out there on how to use MongoDB, which is a type of a database with Node and Express. Let's see. So I wanted to focus on C++. With learning JavaScript put me in a good position to learn it. Yeah, so like C++ is more difficult, but JavaScript will get you familiar with the fundamentals. So like there are for loops in C++. There are arrays in C++. There are Booleans and Boolean logic, and all that stuff is in C++. There's a little bit of there's differences, but these key concepts, they're all the same across program. From a high level, they're all the same pretty much across like all languages. And so so this would put you in a position to learn C++. C++ is harder. Yeah, so our graduates, we tell them to ignore degree requirements on job postings, because job postings are generally a wish list from the company, and companies actually don't really. Most of them don't really care. So Austin and I actually don't have college degrees. So I dropped out of college and got a programming job directly, just because I was able to, and ended up not finishing my degree. I didn't need to, and there were things I could have learned from it, but it was more beneficial for me to get work experience than to go back and finish my degree, and that's never been a hindrance for me. And of course, this is anecdotal. But having a degree will always help you. It's just whether or not the ROI on the 4 years, and then also the opportunity cost. You have to factor in the opportunity cost, and then the actual cost, and it's just deciding if that's worth it. And so, for me, I never had a degree, and in programming, it's very much a meritocracy. Most companies, the vast majority, I only actually know of one company that won't hire people without degrees, and they're a pretty old company. Most companies, they don't care if you have a computer science degree, as long as you understand the material and do it. They're open to that, and there's very much a shifting attitude towards the like educational requirements and the way that you assess candidates. Because some universities, a lot of them actually don't necessarily prepare you to be a good programmer. It depends on the school. Obviously, if you go to Stanford or MIT or or Harvard, you're going to come out with an amazing CS degree that you paid a lot for. But maybe some of the local schools or local colleges may not be as good. It all depends. It depends on their curriculum and their staff, and there's a lot of variables that come into play. But a CS degree isn't necessarily a stamp of, isn't necessarily an indicator of high ability, and a lot of companies realize that, and so that's why their assessments are more it's a meritocracy. If you can write the code and if you can pass the assessments and perform, then then they want you. Pluralsight. I haven't done a lot with Pluralsight. There's the Mozilla Developer Network, so MDN. That's one of the best resources for JavaScript. So again, if you want to go start working on the homework, that's fine. This is just kind of open discussion time where I'm answering questions. But MDN is Mozilla. They make the Firefox browser. They have a bunch of stuff on JavaScript, but it's also on HTML and CSS. These are the best resources you can look at for learning JavaScript. They're so good. They're very clear, and it can be a little harder when you're a really new beginner, but as you get better, this is one of the best references you can look at. So if you really want to master JavaScript, master the language, this is a fantastic reference to look at. And so the tutorials and everything, there's lots of really good stuff in here. And these intermediate and advanced topics, these get asked about in interviews a lot. And so we have our students review these quite a bit. So MDN is a great place. So it's not like videos and content like that, but it has lots of good things in here. Yeah, and so so with universities, you get a lot of theory, and first principles, and you'll spend a lot more time working on a lot of the fundamentals because generally they'll start bottom up. Our approach is top down. We start with practical. We try to get you actually building things like real things with modern, up-to-date tools as soon as possible, and then work our way down into the more theoretical as we go along. And that seems to be a much better educational model or a path for learning as opposed to the first principles approach where before you even write any code you learn math, and then after you learn math you go in and you learn like the binary and get into computer architecture and get into those fundamentals and build up, and that seems like that would be a better way to in practice. It's not as effective in our experience, and by teaching you kind of the high level stuff and like the stuff that's more fun, like how to actually start building like mobile apps and web pages and servers, and like actually see stuff and working with real modern up-to-date technologies that are currently being used. That's more fun, and then that helps you get a good base, and it makes it easier to learn the fundamental stuff later on. Top book recommendations. There's a book called that's free online. Eloquent JavaScript has some good stuff. This is all free. You come in here and read it. So this is a good one. JavaScript MDN. Again, this is more JavaScript focused. Well, these are great things. Someone's asking about like coding algorithms, practice algorithms. So yeah, so we actually every single day in our class, we have our students work through common interview questions, different like algorithms and things like that. Just so you get a lot of practice and figure out how to write those different algorithms and stuff. Cool. All right. I think we'll call it there. So if you have any other questions, Slack, and we'll do our best to answer them. We do the teachers and TAs do take off after a little bit, but we'll do our best to help you out. Thanks everyone, and I will see you guys tomorrow.